morning, and thank you for tuning in to WMEB 91.9 FM Orono, Maine, and thank you for tuning in to Layers of Expression. My name is Sam, and I'm your host. Today, my guest is Merrilee. Oh my God, I don't know your last name.
Schoen.
Schoen, thank you. Recent IMFA graduate and local artist. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Merrilee.
Hey Sam, it's really good to be here. Let's see, a little bit about myself. Live in Maine.
Correct.
I have a creative practice that involves a lot of street art, a lot of found objects. I've been really into rust and broken glass. I have a cat, he's orange, and his name is Marbles.
Marbles?
Yes,
Oh my God,
Mr.
cute.
Moneybags Marbles G is his full name, in case anybody's wondering.
Yo, I recently just inherited an orange cat.
Dude, they're the best.
Dude, he is an interesting one. Orange cat behavior is very real. I thought it was a phenomenon that didn't exist, but no, it's very real.
It's erratic.
He's off the walls crazy. His name is Smooth, and he is, he's also one of the biggest cats I've ever seen in my life. I think he's like 9 or 10 years old, and he's got thumbs. He's super
Sounds like
cute.
a character.
Oh, he is. We call him Smoochy Boochy. So a little bit about mine and Merrilee's relationship. I met her during the course of the MFA program, for those of you listening, and I really fell in love with her process and kind of the way she talks about her work. So that's something that I really admire in you and your process.
Thank you.
I'd like you to tell me maybe a little bit about maybe the thesis exhibition, that project, and then maybe kind of where you were to where you're developing into now.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you for the kind words also.
Of course.
Yeah, I've always appreciated working with you when I was here. And so my thesis project was on the demolition of 127 Hammond Street, and so for those that are local to Bangor or grew up in Bangor, that is the address of the old YMCA. And throughout my MFA program, I became increasingly interested in the built environment and kind of how systems of power dictate our surroundings and how authority is used to construct or deconstruct. And so part of my practice is also to take public transportation and go on walkabouts and go on little adventures. And so I was going on walkabouts trying to find indications of these systems of power that might be just around. So also in that time, I should say that part of my practice is also a social practice, which basically, essentially what that means is that my art is informed by social issues, and oftentimes that means that I spend a lot of time in solidarity and involved in mutual aid work. So as I'm going around these walkabouts looking for systems of power, I'm also thinking about all of these vacant buildings that are in Bangor, simultaneously the increase in houselessness and precarious housing, people getting priced out. And so I stumbled across this huge building, 127 Hammond Street, and it said it was up for bid. And so I proceeded to go on a little adventure of finding out, little research adventure of who owned it, what was going to happen to it. And I finally went to the Penobscot Deeds office, and they said, well, it's going to be demolished. And I thought, oh my God, because I had thought, whoa, couldn't we do something with this space, this vacant space? And so, long story short, somewhat circuitous, but I ended up cold calling the demolition company, Alloy Group, and saying, hey, I'm an artist, I'm, doing my thesis research on systems of power and the built environment, and we had coffee, and he said, bring a hard hat and a fluorescent vest, and I was like, yes, thank you, fashion,
I'll be there.
I love a fluorescent vest, I love a hard hat. Then so for 4 months, I basically constructed a self-directed, very informal artist residency. Also collected a lot of interviews, informal interviews with folks, houseless folks, people that had memories, people that were experiencing grief from the loss of the space, or that they learned how to swim or met their wife, or, so there was a lot of, it was a really multifaceted project. The exhibit was some of the rebar and concrete and I-beams, and I constructed it through chance operations, so pulled cards from a hat that would tell me the order of how to put things together.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. Though I'm very aesthetically driven, it wasn't aesthetics that I needed to be at the forefront. It was to, as closely as possible, take what the material that I had reclaimed and present it in another location.
Yeah.
That wasn't, that was another system of power.
There is so much to unpack with that. Oh my God.
I know.
No, that's incredible though. Being an artist in today's age, so much of it is driven to be aesthetically pleasing in some capacity, or to like conform to like conventional ideas of beauty in some shape, way, or form, because we're like driven to try to commercialize ourselves in some way, because that's how you make it as an artist, is someone has to buy your art or show your art somehow. But allowing the process to dictate over aesthetics is a really fascinating thing. And then another point that really stuck out to me was that you were able to accept that, like, even though it was being demolished, and that is sad, and so much of the history of the building probably influenced the direction of like your process, but like being able to acknowledge that you can't do anything about it, but still giving form and presence to what it represents is such a powerful object. You're right, you couldn't stop the demolition,
right,
but what it represented was so important.
Yeah.
The march walk thing we did last year with the feminist art theory class for the Rockland show, but I think to the instance where we stopped in front of a garbage pile and
yes, we did.
and you created a space for it to mimic that of like a visual too, like what we talked about, like the act of the candles and lighting. The weather was so actively working against us, but we
many candles were not lit, but the symbol was there.
Exactly. Because I think that's representative of what you've talked a lot about in your work, creating that space for appreciating like the loss of, the absence of, or the change of something, like a space or environment.
So I think for me, found objects are these microcosm of this macrocosm.
Absolutely.
When we think about scales of power.
Yes, absolutely.
Scales of power. I'll leave it there.
There's so, again, there's so much to unpack in that too. I think especially for people listening who are not necessarily familiar with like the artistic interpretation of that, I'd love for you to maybe dive into that in a condensed version, because I know it's such a dense concept and topic.
Change is inevitable. Change is a beautiful expression of the human experience, the human condition. There are tender instruments of change, and there are brute instruments of change. And so when we think about how change happens in our world and who does the changing, I think that's where my mind goes when we think about breaking down the concept of systems of power.
The existence of the power structure, and then also how it operates is kind of what you're breaking down right now.
Yes, oh my gosh. That was great. Thank you. Those words are very helpful.
No problem.
You're so good.
Hey. Can you tell me a little bit about how, like, that understanding of the system and the power, like, kind of functions informed your artistic research? I'm curious how the things you're interested in kind of fit into that, and maybe how you developed some of the thoughts that eventually led to your exhibition project.
Sure, yeah. It was the action research, which for me was bearing witness to the demolition.
The site and stuff.
It was really wandering downtown Bangor, lots of wandering.
There's a lot of good that can come from just taking like walks and like being directly in contact with the environment you're trying to understand, like living in it.
Right. Me, I studied a lot on how power is managed, and what does that look like for an anarchist, what does that look like for a socialist, what does that look like for a Democrat, Republican, you know. So politics did come into play for me.
Yeah. How can they not? Unfortunately, in the kind of stuff that you're interested in and the things you're exploring. And honestly, from just my experience of being immersed in the arts, at least at the university and across, like my own research outside of outside of the program, like politics kind of plays a role in almost everything.
Right, and it's gatekeeping.
100%.
Who's gatekeeping, right? And
Everybody, it feels like.
Who's gatekeeping the knowledge, and who's saying yes, that's acceptable, no, that's not acceptable.
Right.
You know.
I'm really interested in having, like, dialogue and conversation as material, and that is somewhat of an existing art form currently, but there's not. It takes a bunch of different types of forms, so I'm not necessarily conforming to something that already exists. I'm trying to explore what could be out of these conversations. And I don't necessarily know what that would look like in terms of like an object yet. Trying to do something new within that is also intimidating, because how do you situate yourself there?
Well, and here's an interesting piece on the newness. I'm trying to remember this quote. There are no is it Adrienne Marie Brown? There are no new suns, but there are like days with sun or something like this.
Okay.
The idea of like, is the goal of newness in service to you? Is it in service to our culture? The idea of new, I mean, nobody's you.
Right.
And so iterating on something that has been through yourself, through your lens, through your creative practice,
Right.
It's already new.
You're right.
You know, and so I think I found myself struggling with that's a very, for me, it felt very colonial and capitalist to suggest that we need to have something new. And instead, might we consider the beauty in iterating on something that has been.
That's a beautiful way to put that. Oh my God.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, I think like, I mean, that's why I work with trash, you know?
Right.
It's like, there's, like, I mean, I'm like a scavenger, because it's like, look, we already we're in excess. We have so much, there's so much, and so to kind of be easy and be gentle with yourself during this time of like, you know, and also, I mean, I got my psych degree before I got here.
Oh, really?
Right?
I didn't know that.
So the task for me was, how do I combine decades of social human rights advocacy, you know, crisis hotline work, like how do I combine that passion and history with this other creative pursuit? And it turns out that they're somewhat abstractly one and the same. But they're just very different expressions. So.
No, I can see that entirely, especially because of the themes you focus in on your practice are all so socially engaged. Like, it makes sense to come from the background you have into like the processes and the things that you're thinking of. Absolutely. Something I think that we've kind of teetered on but haven't really dove into quite yet is talking about the idea of success and failure as an artist. I know we touched a little bit on like the idea of the gallery and the museum being a form of validation, because that means a bunch of people might have seen your work and someone might have bought your work, or you know, something along those lines. And I'm really curious about maybe like what your interpretation of failure and success looks like, because we know what the commercialization success and failure looks like if you got money or not, you know what I mean? So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
You know, it's a struggle.
The starving artist is a thing, for real.
And with that struggle, I feel this rebellion to subscribe to a success that requires me to commodify something that is actually feels so much more like a soul project. Recently done some markets. I've made some jewelry with found objects. I tried to go back into the market, you know, little peddling, harken back to my Highland tinkerer, Scottish peddler roots of whatever. It's challenging for me.
No, I totally agree, because it's existing in two bodies at the same time, I feel.
It's existing in two bodies. And it's like, oh, I don't want to fragment myself. I really want that. I'm looking for like integration and wholeness in this world. And I think it's becoming even more and more important for that. And like for me, success is being able to like go down to the train tracks. On my birthday, I went down to the train tracks and I just like tagged a little bit and like messed around with some like railroad ties and like, you know, I don't know who's gonna see what I made, right?
But it was that letting the expression just kind of happen organically.
Yeah. I would love to be able to continue my social activism work.
I agree with you 100%. I like to ask this question because most of the time it's similar in answer, but with just like obviously unique answers per person, and it usually is broken into a couple categories of what success and failure looks like. But the failure always seems to have the same answer of I'm not happy, or I don't feel fulfilled in whatever I'm doing. Unfortunately, money is a factor in our life, and money will come and go regardless of what you're doing. But fulfillment and satisfaction in yourself is where the success and failure line teeters.
Success is like not about the status. It's about, you know, what are we leaving for others?
Right.
And, you know, how are we interacting with our world in a positive, like, beneficial way?
Right. I would empathize with that 100%. Because like, even if I'm not making work that is like always complete or like seen by anybody besides myself, to me, that feels like, I don't want to describe it as a weight lifted off my shoulders because that sounds negative, but it's almost just like a sense of like, and a little bit.
It's soothing. It's self-soothing.
Yeah.
There's something that's very soothing about being able to engage with our creative muse.
Exactly.
And it's so important. It's such a critical aspect of my living and ability to live. It's that relationship with the muse.
I totally agree. There are so many parts of ourselves that we don't show, and so when I would work with like clients or artists or models that wanted to do like collaborations or work with me, I always ask them the same question. I'm like, tell me about yourself. Like, let me learn more about you so I can see, not that I'm like an authority on the subject by any means, but I feel like I have a innate skill to help people pick and pull those parts that they repress, the parts that they're really proud of that they can't talk about or show, and help them give that shape or form.
Yeah, I mean, and so I think in that sense then, Sam, you probably are very naturally falling into the curatorial world, right?
I think it's happening, I can't help it, genuinely.
Yeah, I think that this is a natural progression.
I think it is.
You know, timeline, yeah.
Yeah, and something too that I love, especially like, are these show segments that I get to do. We're just like talking to people because I am the first to acknowledge that I am not the most educated person in a lot of the topics that I get to talk to people on. But it doesn't, right? It's just talking about it.
And that's the best way to learn, and then to share the knowledge through the broadcast. You know?
The broadcast and the places that I post this and stuff like that, because it's really, for me, fulfilling. We've talked about so much today, and I genuinely think it's been really enlightening. And I think something that really, I think, is important to talk about too, and in the context of what we're talking about, especially in socially engaged art, is representation of community. So like, for example, in the project you did, you were representing a community, you know, in the demolition and the history of the building, the history of the space. I'd love for the show to kind of end on you talking a little bit about some of those interactions you had with the community and the people you talked to that got to live in that space and whatnot.
And I would just say you know, do you remember this building? And he was like, oh my God, I used to like rock climb there. I met my wife there. Like, I'm so sad that this building is being torn down. I have such good memories. And, you know, and so then we would spend some time talking about those memories. And so there was grief of memories for some.
Sure.
But there was also this, like, a sense of abandonment of potential.
Yeah.
So a lot of the conversations were like, hey, you know what? We should have all county commissioners and council members who are making these decisions stay outside for a night. Get a sleeping bag.
Right.
Stay outside
get a
for a
tent.
night.
Get something.
See how it feels, you know? Or if you're lucky to have a tent.
Right.
And so now that I'm describing all this to you, I've actually forgotten your original question.
No, you've answered it because it was all just centered on like community, talking to the people that were like, and because you were acting as a witness, as almost like a documentarian of what was happening, and you wanted to see and understand the lived and real experiences of the community that was being affected. And you totally answered my question. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Cool.
I have ADHD storytelling mechanisms all the time, and you were very straight and on the narrow for that. I promise. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. This has been so wonderful.
This has been so inspiring, like just rejuvenating. You really like revived a lot. You know, a lot of this work has been kind of still bubbling through my current practice, and so it's nice to kind of
like recap and talk about it and kind of see how you're going to transition and move forward. Yeah, and I love that. I love being I love creating the space to be able to have these kind of conversations, because you never really know what's going to come out of it. And I learn so much each time. And I also love just like building up my community, because I think there needs to be more of that, especially in the world we live in today. So